Hello and welcome to the video about testing skills and anxiety. When we're looking at testing skills and anxiety that can be associated with exams and different types of things, we are really looking at a very complex issue, and so this is just going to scratch the surface of basic tips and tricks to help with your testing skills or testing anxiety. So let's get started. So what is the purpose of testing? So when we're looking at testing, it really is looking at how we evaluate someone is doing and how they can do this thing, this skill, this task, this concept, how they can do it under stress. When we're looking at testing, it's not you rising to the occasion, it's when we test, it's really looking at how much have you mastered. And testing really puts you under a type of stress on purpose to look at your level of mastery of either the subject or the skill that we're testing on. So what type of skill, what type of content has the student have you been able to remember under stress? And that really is a good factor. It's just like doing flashcards. Do I remember this? What's 9 times 7? Do I remember this? Do I have this down? Do I have that? It's that remembering under stress. Have I mastered that skill? And if you don't have it, then that's not a way to master that skill. It shows that you need improvement in that skill. So we're identifying areas that need some attention and areas that we need to improve on. And the other advantage here when you're looking at this is the study time component. When you're practicing, when you're studying under stress, where you have someone doing things like flashcards, or you have someone, okay, what is the capital of this, right? What is the name of this bone that does this thing, right? What is the origin insertion of this muscle, and so on and so forth, or tendon, and this helps you understand what areas you're okay in and what areas you need to work on. And the advantage of that is you can study the areas that you need to work on and get a better return of investment for your study time. Because it's one thing to study and read and study and read and study and read, but you won't know what you have mastered until you give yourself either a practice exam or a flashcard or a study group to really help you through that material. So really it will help you with your study time be more efficient as well. So the key concepts that we're looking at is, hey, as educators, when we're doing tests, we're trying to see if you can understand this information overall, or if we need more attention to this concept. And so key concepts that we're doing, make sure that you go through those and make sure you understand those under stress. And then if you're having trouble remembering this information under stress as you're practicing under stress, don't wait till the test comes around to see how you do with remembering the information under stress. Try to figure out a way to stress yourself with the information before you get to the test. I know this sounds a little weird, but like I said, it will help you know what areas and concepts you have down and what areas of concepts that will give you the most return of investment for your study time as well. So why is testing so important, especially in healthcare? Well, it looks at the baseline standard of information under stress that you're currently capable of. Where are you at with the information? So not only you as the student can see where you really are at with the skill, with this knowledge, with this content, but also it helps the instructors know too, where are you at with the knowledge? Where are you at with the skill? Where are you at overall with this information? And so between both parties really does help us understand where you're at and what are your areas of opportunity. Testing builds trust, and these certifications, when you have all these credentials behind your name and all these letters and all these certifications, those are big things to look at because it helps us understand that this person has met the minimum requirements to take care of me, to take care of my family. It gives us that competency component, that the person that is taking care of us and that the person we're taking care of, that we have gone through this information. We are able to have this competent way of thinking under stress, under the skills of everything, that we've met those requirements. Wouldn't you want to know if the person working on you or your loved one meets rigorous standards? And that's what we're looking at here. Why do we need testing? Why do we need certification exams? Why do we need these things? Well, these certification exams, these board exams, whatever they are, really are showing that you've met the standards to practice in your profession. And it's a way to make sure that the patient and the other healthcare providers together know that you're a valuable, trusted member of that team and of the profession. So what we do in healthcare is perform a skill under stress. And testing is asking you to perform the academic procedure or the academic skill under stress. And that is what we're trying to really build with this scenario. So one of my big components here is going to be asking you to have an introspective moment. Think, how do I study in a way that prepares me for the stress of the test? Do I just read the material? Do I listen to the lecture? How do I do it in a way that gives me the stress ahead of time? Do I make practice exams? Hey, do I have AI make a practice exam for the material for me, right? These are little things you can do to help you stress each other, to figure out what information do you have down under stress before the test, what information do you have down under stress, and what information do you not have down under stress. Because then your study time, like I said before, really diminishes because you know exactly what areas you've got and what areas you need to work on. So studying skills where you're having people make flashcards, ask each other to you, make practice tests for each other, things like that that can really help you understand what you do know and what you need to work on. These things will really help you prepare not only for the academic and skills part of the coursework, but also for the profession as well. And we need the testing of the profession to help make sure that our team is competent in taking care of people. All right, so now is for a moment to think about, do you have any of the following? Do you have the inability to concentrate? Do you ever get nauseous when you're about ready to take a test? Do you ever feel angry or have headaches, or your heart feels like it's beating fast or funny? So your breathing feel like you're breathing a little bit faster than you normally do? Do you ever feel lightheaded and a feeling of fear, frustration, or an impending doom before a test? These are all symptoms of test anxiety. Now, does it mean you have to have all of these to have test anxiety? No. If you have that nausea, that feeling of frustration and fear before a test, guess what? That's a component of testing anxiety. A lot of people feel these things before exams, especially really, really big exams. And so understanding and having that moment of introspection can be very helpful to make sure that you're prepared overall for what's going on. So if you know that these things are happening to you, then let's come up with strategies to help you calm your heart rate down, to calm your respiratory rate down, to calm these feelings. Things like repeating a mantra to yourself, these little things to help you calm down. Because if you're in this fight or flight sympathetic state where your brain's going a million miles a minute, is that a place where your brain can remember very complex information under stress? Probably not. In that moment, your brain is thinking about running and jumping, all the adrenaline that's going through your system, all the cortisol that's being dumped into your system, your blood sugar spiking. All those things are going on when you have this testing anxiety component. So what are some things you can do to really help reduce this? One is how you prepare for it, how you prepare for the exams, how you prepare for your skill assessments. The other one is going to be, okay, I recognize that I'm feeling this way. What are some methods I can do to calm myself down, that guided meditation, whatever it is, to help calm you, to get you into that more relaxed state? Those are all going to be methods that can also help too. So what is testing anxiety? Well, it's a type of performance anxiety with the fear of failure. A lot of students feel that if they fail this exam, it's a representation of them as a person. And it's not. And especially if you have a neurodiverse background, it's not necessarily even a representation of how well you understood the material in some ways or another. It just really does depend. And so really we're looking at something that doesn't represent you. It doesn't represent your ability to execute the material. It's just a standardized way of evaluating how well you're doing with the material. So this performance anxiety really contributes to the symptoms that we were just talking about. And that those symptoms, like we talked about, will have a hard time when you start to try to remember complex information. Your brain's in a whole separate area. It's in a fight or flight response. And when you feel that nervous feeling when you're about to take the test, that's a very normal thing to feel for a lot of students. And it is normal to feel some pressure before an exam. A little stress can really help you focus and do better. So next time you feel that stress before an exam, think about, hey, have I prepared under stress? Have I done the flashcards? Have I done the practice test, if that's an option? Have I done study groups where we keep asking each other out of the blue? It's normal to feel that pressure. How do you channel that pressure is my question. Are you going to channel that pressure where it overwhelms you and you don't even know where to start and what to do with it? Or can you try to channel that pressure to help you focus and do better? Hey, I know I had trouble remembering this bone or this part of the muscle system or this part of so on and so forth. Can you use that stress? Can you use that little bit of pressure to help you focus more? So think about next time you feel this, am I going to use this to feel overwhelmed? And that can be a true feeling, but can I use this emotional response? Can I use this stressful response? Can I use it to actually help me focus even more and use it for good? Hey, if I'm going to have this stress, I might as well use it for good. So remember that if you do fail, is it the end of the world? And that's that feeling of impending doom we were talking about before. If you fail a board exam, right, everybody's expecting you to come back and say, hey, I passed this exam. But if you fail, really, it's not the end of the world. Most board exams you can take again. Good news, right? So if things do not go well, you may be able to take that credential exam again. That's good news. Take it with freedom. It's if you take it with this fear, if you take it with this anxiety, that's when your brain's not going to be able to recall this information. If you fail, you failed, but at least you tried. At least you worked on it. And guess what? You can take it again, right? And that's what you need to focus on. It is not the end of the world if you fail. It does not reflect you as a person. It does not reflect your morals. It does not reflect your background. It does not reflect those around you. It is just a test. It is just to see where you were at that moment of time and what areas you were great in and what areas you needed to work a little bit more in. That's it. So your grade or score does not reflect your value as a person. If the grade's not strong, see it as a chance to grow, not as failure. It's very rare that success is linear. Very, very rare success is linear. So when you have these moments of failure, when you have these dips, it's okay. These are the areas that you know you need to grow on. So when I take it next time, I know I'm going to work on this. I know that I remember this. I know that I can work on this area really well because that's an area that I struggled with when I was taking that exam. So once again, your score does not reflect your value as a person. I'll repeat it a third time. Your score does not reflect your value as a person. Keep that in there, right? Breathe. Take a breath and do the best you can, but take that breath. So now we talked about what testing anxiety sort of manifests as, the symptoms of testing anxiety. But what are some of the common causes of testing anxiety? That's cute. I understand that I feel these things when a test comes up, but what's really causing it? And like I said, this is just meant to scratch the surface. This may or may not be true in your situation, but fear, especially of failing, poor testing history. If you have a background where you've just done poorly on tests, the standardized tests in the past, ACTs, SATs, different types of exams in the past, that can all play a factor into your future testing and your current testing. Absolutely, because now you think, no matter what, I'm not going to pass this test. If you ever watch a kicker before they go kick a field goal in football, they're going to imagine them kicking the field goal. They're going to watch it go through mentally before they ever do it. Could you imagine if before they went to go kick the field goal, they imagined that they kicked it off to the side every time, no matter what, that they would miss it no matter what? How well do you think that kicker would perform? Right? If a golfer thinks that every time they're going to put the ball, it's not going to go into the hole, is it ever going to go into the hole? No, it's going to be very rare. They're mentally sabotaging themselves, right? If they think that negatively beforehand. So that poor testing history, that history of doing poorly, please think about this being the future. This being the present and the future. This is not your history. This is you now, not you then, right? So that poor performance history. And then, once again, are your grades defining your worth? A lot of people, it depends your culture and how things you grew up with, but sometimes that's where people come from, is that background of believing that your grades determine your value as a person. I'll tell you now, it doesn't. It doesn't. Your level of compassion says more about you than your grade and GPA point will ever say. So your level of compassion, that's a bigger difference than what your grade was. Perfectionism, these are all things: poor study skills, lack of preparation, feeling that high pressure, stress around a testing history, pressure on time tests. These are all things that can really contribute to testing anxiety. So take a moment, maybe pause this, take a moment and think about which one of these could be a component. And then if it's not on this list, that's okay too, but try to do a moment of introspection and think, how can we look at this component? How can we look at this and sort of identify, okay, what's the root cause of a lot of this? And whether or not it's on this list, it's something to think about and maybe talk to someone about as well. So, what are general methods to really help with testing anxiety? And like I said, this is not an exhaustive list, but these are different things to look at. And one of the first ones I like to mention is relaxation techniques. These really are something that you want to have in your game plan because they really help you out when that stress comes. But the big thing is understanding that you need the skill of relaxation techniques. So this is something that you practice outside of the testing time period. You don't wait till the testing comes and then be like, now I got to practice my testing skill, my relaxation technique skill. No, practice that at home, right? When something gets angry, you're in traffic and something bad happens. Practice your relaxation techniques, as long as it's not closing your eyes while you're trying to drive, right? That relaxation technique should be something to even practice in our daily lives, I think is a good component overall. But you want that skill, you want that practice, so that way when it does come time for you to execute your relaxation technique, you've practiced it, you have that skill, and you know that it works for you. Little things like deep breathing, holding, doing that square breathing pattern, or yoga diaphragmatic breathing, that belly breathing that really helps massage that vagus nerve to calm down your heart rate and blood pressure. Tensing all your muscles and then releasing them, relaxing these muscles at the same time. Doing things like positive imaging, like what we talked about before. Imagining good things, imagining your positive mantras. These are all things that really can help reduce those moments of stress and help you get back from that fight or flight response, that anxiety response, to something where you can now recall that information more effectively. All right, the next one, taking this one from the sports world as well, but a consistent pre-test routine. When athletes prepare before they go into a batter's box or before they get ready for a game, they're going to have the same pre-game stretches, the same pre-game routine, the same thing that they eat, the same thing that they wear, the same thing, so on and so forth. They're going to have that consistent routine before they get ready, and following the same steps each time you get ready to take a test is going to be a key component. Things like making sure that, hey, it's 5 days before a test, I'm going to start off with this. I'm going to try to find Quizlets. I'm going to try to find flashcards or make flashcards. I'm going to try to find practice tests. I'm going to try to find these things to help me get prepared. I'm going to try to find study group partners. I'm going to try to do these things, and having that routine, and I'll go through a routine here in a little bit upcoming, but having that same pre-test routine, making sure that you've eaten food. All right, your brain does not run well when the glucose is low, so making sure you're eating the same things. Nothing new should be done on test day. You shouldn't do any new techniques for testing. You shouldn't do any new foods. You shouldn't do new caffeine that you've never had before. These things can really help you have that same pre-test routine and take away any anxiety that could be going on. Another thing is going to be studying a little at a time in similar places. This is great. A little over time, like I said, having a 5-day testing, not the night before. And this is what a lot of students do, is the day before, the night before test. What do they do when they're trying to remember everything? They're trying to read through the material again. They're trying to do flashcards. But that's only the night before. And this is where having a calendar, an actual calendar, right, that has days of the week and what your plans to do each day of the week. This day of the week, what am I doing for this course and this course and this course? Even if it's 30 minutes for each course, right? And you're in 3 or 4 courses. There you go. You're 30 minutes for this course, I'm doing this. 30 minutes for this course, I'm doing this. 30 minutes for this course, I'm doing this. And then it doesn't become overwhelming. And that overwhelming feeling really does contribute to testing anxiety. So make sure you calendar, make sure you schedule a little time each day for each course. That way you're not cramming before a course. The cramming really puts you into a sympathetic fight or flight response, that cortisol response. And you're going to have that hard time when you go to the test. Have you practiced the skills under stress? Do you know which skills you do better under stress, or which concepts you remember better under stress? You won't know that if you're just studying the night before. Another thing here that can really help you out is actually studying in the same environment you'll take the test. If the environment is a little bit cooler, if the environment has a little bit more noise to it, if the environment, so on and so forth, studying in that same environment is going to be very helpful to you. Should you always study in a hot room that's not the opposite of where you're going to take the test? You could, that's up to you, but having that same environmental factors really is going to be helpful to you, because that's going to be nothing new. Your brain and your body are ready to these conditions, remembering this information. So if I put you into these same conditions, what's going to happen to your brain and body? They're going to be able to perform hopefully similar in the same conditions. Talk with your teacher. This should be an obvious one. A lot of people are scared to talk to their professors, their teachers, but they understand what's going to be on each test. Let me repeat that again. Talk to your teacher. They understand what's going to be on each test, and let them know that you feel anxious. They know the areas that students tend to struggle on with each exam. I guarantee it. They know which parts, which concepts, which skills, if it's a skills lab. They know which ones the students struggle with the most. Hey, what areas do students struggle with the most on this exam? What concepts do they struggle with the most? Do you have tutoring time? Do you have time to look at my skills so we can look at these things together? Those are going to be important things. So when you see that, talk with your teacher. If you have that understanding that the stress of this test is going on to you, hey, what areas do I really need to work on? What areas are usually trouble spots for this exam? Get some exercise. This is a great way to release some of this nervous tension that you have, this nervous, anxious, sympathetic attention. Get that exercise, get your blood flowing, get your brain going. Get that exercise out, deep breathing, get that nervousness out. Let your brain and your body regulate. Let it calm itself. These are key components to making sure physiologically your body and your brain are ready to go. And finally, get plenty of sleep. I can't stress this enough. How well does your brain recall information under a sleep-deprived state? It really doesn't, not that well. And so making sure that you schedule how late you're going to be up that night before a test, right? Make sure you're doing that. And hopefully, if you've been doing what I talked about earlier, where you have that consistent pre-test routine, not just the night before, but 5 days before, as long as you have that consistent routine, then we're really looking at you still being able to get plenty of sleep where your brain is refreshed so you can perform well on those tests. And don't ignore other problems. Get help for the things that interfere. If you have things like ADHD or dyslexia or learning disabilities, look for ways to get reasonable accommodations for those. If you need extended testing time, if you need those things, that's something to talk and bring up to places like your student services department, or to your teachers, or to whoever that needs to know to help you with these problems. Whatever professionals you're using for this, get them involved. Don't ignore them. Don't think that you can just do this without that help. The whole point here is to make sure that you are successful, and ignoring these problems can really hinder you or slow you down, or sometimes become brick walls in your ability to succeed. And finally, a professional counselor is never a bad idea. I know there's a stigma associated with counselors and getting help that way, but please understand, especially if the school offers services to help you out with that, utilize that. That is there to help you succeed. You want to succeed. We want you to succeed. If the counselor is someone that can help you to do that, let's do that. Let's make sure that you have that component to help you through this anxiety. And they're the ones that are skilled in this area to really help walk you through what's going on. All right, this is just one of my key things here is the 5-day study plan. Number one, figure out what you need to know. And this is one of those things we were talking about earlier. Ask the teachers, what content do students struggle with on this exam? What concepts really are sticky points for a lot of students? And they'll know what concepts are sticky points. These are big things to look at here, but identify, organize, consolidate the material. Try to see if you can bullet point your notes. Use a study guide. Make a study guide. Use flashcards. Make flashcards. Try to do concept maps if your brain likes mind maps. Practice questions. I'm a big fan of practice questions personally because they help me recall information under stress. And these are all ways that I can look at this. So figure out these things. Put together your study guides. At the end of each class, what are 3 or 4 things that the teacher was really emphasizing? Bullet point those. Ask the teacher before you leave for the day, right? These are 3 or 4 things that I really took out of today. Can you expand? Do these look good? Where is this going? You have that saved up. Guess what you've created for yourself? You've created a study guide for yourself for the exam. Don't passively rewrite your notes or reread the chapter. A lot of people like to reread the chapter over and over and over again, and that could be helpful for some students, but don't passively rewrite or reread the chapter. That's not going to tell you if you got stuff down under stress or not. That's where flashcards, that's where concept maps. This is where making sure that if there is practice tests available or having students get together and create a practice test, this is what's really going to help you know if you got this information down under stress or not. Make sure you know it. Right, review. So active reviewing is the big component here, not passively rereading or rewriting your notes. That can be helpful, but have you actively used review methods to do this? And so that lets you know, as we talked about before, if you know the material or not, compared to just read the chapter, read the chapter, read the chapter, listen to the lecture, listen to the lecture. That's cute, but does that actually tell you what you do know and what you don't know? And that's where having an active way of reviewing the information is going to be more beneficial, and it's going to help actually reduce your study time because you'll know exactly what you need to go over and what you've already got mastered. So try blank page testing. Quiz yourself or have a friend or a co-classmate really ask you questions from the notes or the material and see what you have down or not. This is really going to amplify your ability to do this. Start in advance. It's easier to learn how to shoot a three-pointer if you practice each day. Go into more sports analogy. This is where it's going to be a big performance. So you'll perform better if you spend 20 minutes each day getting ready for the test than if you spend 20 hours the day before a test. So make sure that you have this schedule, this calendar planned out. Be disciplined as much as you can. Be disciplined with carving out 30 minutes of class or carving out so on and so forth per day of coursework. And some coursework might need more than that. But just carve that out each day for each course. Even if you don't have that course that day, carve out time each day for that course. And make sure that you have that a little at a time, a little at a time, a little at a time will really add up. So what are we looking at here? Break the material down of the exam into chunks or small groups of the material. If you know it's over Chapter 2 content, then make sure, how do I section off Chapter 2 content? And in fact, how does the publisher, how does the book section off the Chapter 2 content? Look for those sections, those paragraph headings, and look for that content that's in different sections, and start with that. Start with those as your chunks. Right? Take that 20, 30, 40 minutes and go with those chunks. Go with those chunks. Those little chunks can make it into big achievable moments compared to being like, I got to read the whole chapter over and over again. No, read this one paragraph 2 or 3 times, summarize next in the margin what it's saying, or highlight important keywords. That's what you got to do, right? Break it down into chunks, make it doable. Plan to spend around 2 hours studying each of the 5 days, and that doesn't mean on just one subject, but plan on that, budget it, if you will. If you don't need it, you don't need it. If you need it, then it's there. So plan on budgeting at least 2 hours of studying each of those 5 days. That way you can break it into chunks. That's why you can take it slowly. That's where it doesn't become overwhelming, and that anxiety should be impacted by that. Work the material in 2 different ways. Preparation and review. Like, you're preparing the material, you're going through the sections, the different sections in the chapter, and you're bullet pointing what it's saying. That's great, because now you're concising the information so it's more memorable to you. And if you make a review quiz or a review test or flashcards or whatever it is you do with that material, now you're remembering under stress. And you have that component of like, how well do I have this material mastered? So work with the material in 2 ways, not just reading over and over again, not just listening to the lecture over and over again, but you have that in 2 different ways. And then decide what preparation and review strategies work best for you. Hopefully in this somewhere you've heard some strategy that's going to either work better, or you already know what works best for you, but hopefully something that works better than just studying the night before, feeling overwhelmed, getting low sleep, and then having the anxiety component when you take the test. The whole idea of this is getting a game plan together so it helps reduce that component. So what does a 5-day exam chunk look like? So this is a 5-day study plan. You can modify this. This is just what's out there. But you can use it with the information of Cornell Learning Strategies, and this is just where I got it from. And so day 1, right, chunk A, 2 hours, chunk. Day 2, you're doing another chunk and reviewing. Chunk 3, right, reviewing chunk C, and then going to chunk B, and then reviewing chunk A. You can see how this sort of stair steps as we go through these preparation strategies, but you're doing a little each day, and it's very achievable. Very, very achievable. And it's not going to be overwhelming when you do these little chunks, because you're doing a little at a time. It makes it much more doable, and you're going to feel more prepared overall for the course, because now, since you studied far out, you've studied more than 24 hours before the test, it's going to be more likely it'll be in your long-term memory. And your long-term memory is what you have when you take a test. Short-term memory, especially under stress, tends to go away under testing skills or testing anxiety. And so when we have this, when we're studying 5 days out compared to the night before, your odds of doing better really go up.